investor and business strategist with over 1,000 acquisitions and exits completed for him and his clients. I'm super excited to be here. Full disclosure, one of my mentors too, man. So to have you on the show is just a real treat for me. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So, I like to joke around and say, hey, you were born, you ended up on my show. Could you fill in the gap? A mergers and acquisitions show. Can you fill in the gap in between? How did you get into this space? I know it's just not like you didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to go into M&A, right? So
yeah, it was a little bit of an evolution. I started out when I was 18. I got my real estate salesperson's license and started selling real estate. And the guy, pretty quickly I saw that I didn't really want to go around banging on doors to get onesie, twosie listings to sell. And so I was like, well, who's got a whole bunch of listings to sell? Developers. So started talking to developers, ended up getting in with a couple of those guys to be able to sell their listings so I didn't have to go out looking, and then started looking at how they were raising money to do deals. I was like, how do you put this stuff together to where you're doing like 300 houses or something like that? And they're like, well, we buy the land and do the entitlement, and we go out and get investors, and we use these things called limited partnerships. And I was like, okay, well, tell me how that works. And they did. And I was like, okay, well, so when I was 19, I got my insurance license. When I was 20, I got my securities license. So it was like, can I start helping you guys raise money? And started doing that through the firm that, one of the firms in New York that I hung my securities license with. I got introduced to some people at Prudential Securities. And at the time, this is the late 80s, leverage buyouts were super, super hot. And so I got kind of taken under the wing of one of those investment bankers, and they were showing me how you can use the assets of a company to pay for itself. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever, because I was doing real estate deals and no money down and stuff like that, but I didn't know that you could do it with businesses. And so I started doing that, and kind of never stopped, because I just like along the way, I was like, well, I could probably take a lot of the stuff I learned about real estate and apply to acquisitions as well. And then started looking at, well, it's nice to own companies, but it's also nice to exit, because when you exit, you get paid several years of profit all in one go. So if I can buy enough companies that I can exit several of them a year, every year I could have 30, 40, 50 years of income. And that sounds pretty exciting. And so I just kind of followed the path to doing that. Along the way, I got my accounting degree, I got my law degree, practiced law for several years. But all along, I've been really, really just kind of an entrepreneur at heart.
I get it. We both have similar backgrounds, not to the same scale. I actually, I was a marketing coach, and one of my clients was a real estate investor. So he pretty much bought our firm and told me to come under his wing and, integrate me in, and I helped him grow it. And, then I kind of burned out on it a little bit, and I hired a performance coach to see what was next. And he said something to me in one of those calls. He said, with everything you know and all the skills you have and as smart as you are, you should be playing a bigger game. I don't care how big of a flip we did. We get one of our better flips is $40K, right? That's a good profit for a single family house in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Every $40K helps.
And they would wire that money into the account and be 40. I think it was $42K. And in the back of my head, I'd hear his voice, but you should be playing a bigger game. So I went out and hunted down one, and I bought a small company, and I bought it wrong. It was way too small. I pretty much just bought the equipment and a customer list, which didn't pound out that much. And I thought, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. So I went and hired some of you guys to show me like and did your Epic course and some other stuff. So I'm excited to be here with you today. Let's talk about the opportunity a little bit. A lot of people don't understand how vast this opportunity is, especially in our point in time in history.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking. There are several things that are kind of conspiring to make it a great opportunity. To me, the three most important ones are that you've got 12 million baby boomers that are kind of aging out at this point, a lot of them in their businesses, and some of them will go forever, but it's about 12 million total that own about $10 trillion worth of businesses. And so over the next 10 years, we can expect thousands and thousands and thousands of deals to become available. The other thing that impacts this is that a lot of those people, when they decide they want to sell, they find they haven't built a sellable business. So they don't ever get to the point where they can sell it, because they start talking to people and they're like, well, you're an owner operator, and if you leave, the business is gone. You don't really have a business, you have a job. And so it's going to be awful hard to sell that. Now, they could professionalize and bring management in, but a lot of them don't want to do that or don't know how. And so a lot of those people, about 600,000 a year, just close the doors to the business. And then the other thing is that only about 20% of the people that decide to list their business for sale actually get a sale as a result of listing the business. And so between the closings and the failures, the number of people who are kind of clamoring now to sell their businesses, who, by the way, their kids want to be Instagram stars. They want to be influencers. They don't want to be a car wash owner, parking lot owner, laundromat owner, right? That's not terribly exciting compared to taking your picture in a private airplane seat that you rent for 15 minutes. And
my 6-year-old just said she wants a YouTube channel.
Yeah, right. And then that market inefficiency, like that it doesn't have the capacity to handle. There isn't a good, it's very fractured, the market for selling businesses. And so till you get up into investment banking, it's just interesting how far behind that is compared to something like real estate.
And, there's a lot of, a lot of these guys, they get into it. I call them accidental entrepreneurs. They didn't actually set out to start a business. They produced a widget a friend wanted, so they sold them one. And the next thing I know, somebody's seeing that and they wanted one too. Or in the case of like a heat and air company, you're working for somebody, else, and then one day you just get sick of it and think you can do it better. But they just don't have the training, schooling, whatever you want to call it, to do the level of business and books and financial, documents that the P&E guys expect to see, right? The profit and loss statements and stuff like that. So a lot of these small guys, you get into it and, they're not only owner operators, there's a kind of a mess there. Mm-hmm. And, the buyer pool, I had one of your guys on here that kind of corrected me in this space when I told him, it's like, yeah, I've looked at so many businesses and just shushed them off because their books are a mess. He said, why? If the business is good, they make a great product and it's profitable and you can make sense of the books, why shush them off?
Yep.
Just because they don't know how to do accounting.
Yep.
He said, are you an accountant? I was like, no, I have to hire those guys too. But if I can't make sense of it, he goes, bring them into the evaluation, help them make sense of it, in the early stage. Right.
Yeah. The good news is nobody's going to, you're not going to have a lot of people competing to buy a business like that. So there's a big opportunity if you're willing to go through it.
So let's look at the space here, right? So there's many ways to get into that. You teach a lot of different aspects of that. One of the things that I like is this contract for equity or this, consulting for equity. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of guys out there, they do consulting. A lot of these small businesses, the only way they're going to get to an exit is through some type of professional services to help them, become exitable.
Yep.
So what does that look like? What does that entail?
What does which part entail?
The contract for equity or working for equity or getting a piece of a business by something you do as a profession anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, you've got value to invest through cash or through services, experience, skills, and connections that you've got. And so a lot of businesses that are looking to accomplish something that they haven't been able to accomplish yet are willing to have somebody come in and do the things that they need in exchange for giving them a piece of the company. So if you're thinking, as a consultant, you're building the brands of other people's companies, and you can add millions or tens of millions of dollars in value by the services that you bring and the efforts that you exert, and you're getting a pittance for doing that. So I think we've seen a trend lately in entertainment where celebrities are saying, I'm not going to just be a spokesperson for a brand anymore. I'm going to own the underlying brand because I can then build wealth and equity. And I'm not just constantly pimping myself out in exchange for a payment to build somebody else's brand. And so the same thing is true with consulting. I think that we all, with value to bring to businesses that can impact the wealth or the transferable value of that business so significantly, are kind of crazy to just provide those services for some flat fee, even if it's a good flat fee. Maybe it's a $50,000 or $500,000 or $1 million. But if you're going to add tens of millions, then why would you accept some small fee? So kind of on the scale of consulting, you got the hamster wheel of trading dollars for hours. And then when you stop, you're a dancing bear, right? Whenever you stop, the music stops, the dancing stops, the crowd stops throwing money. But a smart consultant can, instead of doing that, get a higher effective rate. You can start and you can go and say, oh, well, I'm going to do a flat fee because this is something I do over and over and over. So I effectively increase my hourly rate for something that I know how to do and have done a lot and have templates for, from say $200 an hour to $2,000 an hour, but you're still a dancing bear. So then the next would be rev share, and rev share is good, but that's typically a limited period of time on a limited thing. So I'm going to help you create this marketing campaign. And so as long as this marketing campaign runs, we're going to share revenue and I'm going to get 10% royalty or something like that. That's nice. But again, you're not getting any wealth that's built. So then we get to kind of that higher level, which is consulting for equity, where you say, I'm going to deliver the value. And in exchange for that, once we agree on the value that I'm going to deliver in the period of time that I'm going to do it over, then when I do that, I am going to own X% of the company. That is a way to have income and wealth. Income from the distributions that you get of profits, and wealth from what you're going to have when the company finally sells. So I think like that's the concept is stop being a dancing bear, stop trading dollars for hours, get yourself compensated commensurate with the value that you bring to all these different companies.
And it ends up being a huge win-win because, at some point, most of these consultants are going to do something else, right? You can only be the dancing bear for so long before you realize you're a dancing bear.
Yeah.
And you even look at, there are professions where, doctors and chiropractors and stuff like that, their whole life they're a dancing bear. They're an operator.
Most people.
And until it clicks in their head that they don't have to be, right? There's a transforming effect of a human being when he realizes he doesn't have to do what he's always done.
Yep.
So what are the other opportunities? We've already talked about consulting, get a piece of it. A lot of these guys that are listening to the show, they don't have millions of dollars laying around, and some of them don't have the credit worthiness to get an SBA loan or have the assets to back it. I see you talk a lot about getting into these deals really creative. Could you talk about it a little bit, kind of what that looks like and what it means to, what are the different ways we can get into owning a business of our own without having to be an 800 credit score and $1 million in the bank?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So to me, what we talked about is a good place to start. Like kind of if I'm looking at a deal and I can come in and provide value, and in exchange for that, I can get a piece of the company. That's exciting for me because the company is already existing. It's already making profits. It already has all its operations and operators. And then I'm going to do the thing I do. And that company doesn't need me to be there on a day-to-day basis to continue to operate. So I think the first level is, can I provide this company some capital in the form of the knowledge, skills, experience, and connections I've got in exchange for an equity interest? Then if I can do that, no money out of pocket, I have a piece of the deal, I do my thing, and then I get paid. On the other hand, if that doesn't seem to be an option, and you're thinking, well, I'd actually like to just acquire a company to own the whole company, and that's possible too. And you can go the traditional route, which would be you pay some level of cash for that, which is typically a combination of cash you've got and saved and loans, which require credit. Or you can go kind of the alternative way, which is my favorite thing to do, which is to say, what are the ways to let the business pay for itself? So this all harkens back to the days with the guys in New York looking at their leveraged buyouts, saying, they're buying multi-billion-dollar companies without any money. That's pretty crazy. How are they doing that? Well, a lot of it is debt. That's the leverage part of leveraged buyout. But that debt is leveraged against the assets of the company. So you go and look at the company and say, I like to start out and say, okay, how much do you want, Mr. or Miss Seller? I want $5 million. Great. So $5 million is here. I've got $0 that I want to put in right now. So I've got a $5 million gap to fill. So then it's a question of, well, what are the things that I can do to bridge the gap between 0 and 5 million? And so I'll start talking to them. And some of the easier ones would be, the best debt is typically seller financing because it comes with the least restrictions and it's the most favorable. So then the first question I'm going to have is, would you be willing to finance any of that? And I'll, like, in an ideal world, I'd like for them to finance the whole thing. I'll generally start at a combination of finance and earnout. And the finance portion, whatever amount, like let's say that it's 5 million is my gap, and they say I'll finance 20%. Great. Okay, cool. Well, that's $1 million of gap fill. And so I call that the deal stack, right? Stacking kind of all the different ways we can fund this. So let's say we get 20% through seller finance. And then I'll say, well, would you consider doing an earnout? Because an earnout says, hey, we can't completely agree on what the price is right now, but I'll pay you the price that you're asking for as long as certain events happen, like people stay, clients stay, profit levels are hit, income sales levels are hit, lots of things you can peg it to. And they typically run between 10 and 40% of the company for between 1 and 4 years. So maybe I can get an earnout that says I'll give you 5% per year of the purchase price you're asking over 4 years. And that's now another $1 million. That's 20%, right? That I don't have to worry about. So I've got my gap closed. Now I only owe 6 million towards, what was a 5 million purchase. Now I only owe 3 million. I'm only 3 million short. So then you start looking at other things. And one of the easiest places to find value would be in the assets that the company has. If they've got inventory, equipment, real estate, anything of value, then there are asset-based lenders that I can go and get funding on. So maybe I could get another 20% that way. And then I can get into some more complicated things like, well, maybe they've got accounts receivables and we can factor. And so we go to these people called factors, and they'll either buy or lend against the accounts receivable. And maybe that's another 20%. Now I'm 4 million of my 5 million there. And then I might find the last place. Maybe there's like a revenue-based financing loan that I can go and get. Revenue-based financing is pretty easy to put in place these days. So I'll go to a lender like American Express or Lighter or one of those guys and say, hey, can you give me $1 million against the income of the company? Yeah, it's been doing that for, 6 years or whatever. Yeah, we're happy to do that. And now I've completed my deal stack and I have the thing acquired and I haven't had to come out of pocket. That's kind of the idea behind that.
One of the interesting things I learned in the course, and we actually had a concrete plant we were looking at, and unfortunately the IRS stopped the transfer because they owed the IRS $960,000. But and they were in some type of receivership. They actually had to go to quarterly meetings with them and show them the plan on how they were going to stay on track.
Yeah.
And in that meeting, they told the IRS, like, we're going to sell this guys, and these guys are going to take over the debt. And the IRS, like, no, you're not. So, but before that happened, you mentioned something. They were to the point where, before we knew they had how much trouble they had, they wanted a few $100,000 down for a $13 million concrete, $12.5 million concrete manufacturing. They poured concrete storm shelters and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at that, and we come out of pocket. Well, we found an operator that had grown a business from 10 to like 100+ million. He retired out of that and wanted to buy his own company. So we sold him the CEO operator role on the precept that he could come in here, and put his money into this, own a piece of it, be the operator, and gain more money over time. So we were going to be able to get into that at, it was a $1 down deal. And
nice.
Like I said, when they went, they had said yes at the table, and they went back to review everything. And Dad still had a play. It's a 60-something-year-old company. Dad still had a play in this. They were going to tell him what they were doing. And then they went to their IRS meeting and told the IRS, and the IRS said no. So we got put on hold. But it, in theory, it worked. We were going to get into that for no money out of our pocket, right? And I didn't want to be the operator anyway. I was trying not to buy another job. So
yeah, exactly.
But so there's just this vast thing of this huge opportunity in front of us. We're talking about millions of businesses out there that have to change hands at some point. What do you think the economy is going to do to this? Like I refer to all of us that are in this space as acquisition entrepreneurs. I know I didn't come up with it, but that's kind of the name that's been given to us, right? Mm-hmm. So for the acquisition entrepreneur, do you think that the looming recession, bad economy, whatever, helps us or hurts us?
I think change always creates opportunity. So I think that I would way rather see a recession coming than a continuing bull market that goes on 20 years, because within that comes great opportunity. We just have to be astute to recognize what the opportunity is. So as the economy trends towards recession, And the Fed just said today, hey, we're not going to ease up on interest rate increases, and we've got 2 quarters of reduced or falling GDP. But we've got contrary signs too. We've got a stock market that the S&P is up over 50% from its lowest peak to its highest peak year over year. So the 2 quarters of GDP contraction indicates recession. The 2 quarters or the 1 year with 50% up in S&P indicates bull market. Who knows what's going to happen, right? Well, what we do know is that interest rates are going to go up for a little bit. They're certainly higher than they've been. That means debt is more expensive. That means that the people who are trying to sell businesses that are small are going to have a harder time selling those businesses than they were in the past if debt is being used to acquire them. We don't really use commercial debt, and so we can kind of set the interest rates we want. Now, you might argue, well, the expectation of sellers would be to receive a higher percentage interest rate, but that also isn't the case because the seller wants to sell the business, right? So as long as you find somebody that wants to sell the business, and we're always looking, by the way, for motivated sellers. We're not looking for somebody that's like, well, I don't want to sell, but if somebody pays me stupid money, I'll sell. That's not who we want. And so knowing that there's going to be some difficult times ahead for businesses, a lot of people, and we know the stats we talked about at the beginning of the show about baby boomers, we know that there's going to be increased motivation for people to sell and decreased opportunity for them to sell, which creates for us as acquirers great opportunity. Now, on the high side of the market, when we get past these sub 10 million, sub 2 million, sub 10 million sales, sub 2 million in EBITDA or profit companies, then there are giant opportunities because there's still crazy amounts of dry powder sitting about $5 trillion with private equity and SPACs and family offices and high net worth individuals and strategic buyers. And there's an increasing number of funds. So that means that there's even more competition among them for the few deals that meet their criteria. So I think that the 2 most giant opportunities are if you can get in the niche of helping owner-operated businesses professionalize so that they're no longer owner-operated, then you're generally going to receive around a 2 to 3x increase in the value of the company because there will be far more buyers for a professionally managed company than there will be for an owner-operated company. Owner-operated company means somebody's got to come in and either professionalize it, which is a pain in the butt, or they've got to have a job as the operator. And so when we get past that arbitrage there to me is giant. And then the second arbitrage is as we grow those companies up from smaller sales, from SMBs to larger businesses, that presents a tremendous opportunity because the delta between the average across all industries valuation as of last quarter for a professionally managed business was only a 4.5x, but the average private equity deal was a 15.2. So there's still that giant gap there. And unless things change dramatically with the S&P, it over the last couple of months has gone from about a 21 PE average across all the across all the NASDAQ companies to a 28. So there's still plenty of upside for the private equity companies to continue to pay high multiples because they're going to pick up almost a 10x multiple going public or selling to a public company. So everybody can still win except the owner-operated business that never has had a really good chance of winning, right? So we have a sophisticated, evolved market for selling companies to the public. They're called the stock exchanges, right? And we have a sophisticated market of investment bankers, private equity funds, strategic planners, family offices, SPACs, et cetera, that are buyers there playing that let's flip from an acquisition at a 15 to a sale at a 28. And then we have us. And to me, where we sit is right in the middle of let's help those owner-operated businesses get big enough and get professionalized so that they can appeal to the private equity people that are willing to pay the 15s. And I'll pay, 2 to 5x all day long to sell for 15 a couple years later.
One of the strategies, I don't know if I picked it up from you or somebody else that we used on that one I was talking about, was we didn't offer to buy 100% of the company. We offered to buy 70, I think, 70 or 75. And then we
Yep.
showed them a plan that 30% would be worth more than the 70 after we're done with it. Because we were at that stage where they were doing 10 to 12 they varied. It was like 10 one year, 12 one year, 12 and a half another year in revenue, but they spent every penny they made. They were trying to minimize taxes. Like that, one of the years they were doing that, they had like a $13,000 or $15,000 profit.
Yeah.
It was just insane what they were doing. So, well, we just showed them, like, look, let us do this. Here's our plan for the next 3 to 4 years. We've got 4 more of these we were already looking at. We're going to, there's a problem in that is they're expensive to transport. So it's actually cool to own, those concrete manufacturing that make the same product line in certain regions. So you don't have to, if you have to drive more than 100 miles, you're spending a lot of money. They had 35 trucks with specially made trucks to lift these things up on there and to haul them. And their business expense was their insurance. They had killed somebody the year before in an auto accident because one of those things had come off.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons they were selling, she was a nurse before she took over Daddy's business. And the fact that her company took the life of 2 people in the car, just kept eating at her. So there's all these different reasons. But as far as like that zero down, no down thing, was just part of it showing them, like, here's the plan we're going to do with this. And if I leave you with 30% of it, that could very well be a check way bigger than you were expecting to get right now.
Yeah, and that's a very old strategy that private equity has used for years. Is that and think about it, like, they don't really want to operate the company, and so one of the biggest risks in acquiring is the operator risk. So if they were to acquire 100% of a company, and then the owner was to leave, then they've got to find an operator, and we don't know if that operator will be as successful as the current group at running the company. So one of the best things that they can do is they can say, let's come in, and they'll typically buy 70 to 90%, leaving 10 to 30% with existing management. And existing management then has a second bite at the apple. That's literally what they call it, right? We give you a second bite of the apple. We're going to plan on taking this thing public or selling it at a 6x more than we bought it for. How'd you like to effectively probably get more on the small percentage that you retained than on the first percentage that you sold, right? And then what they get for that is then those people have skin in the game still. They've still got 10, 20, 30%. They've still got the continuity of management, so there's no disruption there. There's no risk to new management, and then everybody wins as the company goes along. That's the theory. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's the theory. So yeah, partial buys, great strategy.
I had Adam on here, Adam Coffey. You familiar with him? So yeah, he has a couple of books out and stuff, but they did a heat and air company and sold it to private equity, I think 5 different times, where he stayed as the CEO through all 5. The last exit was over $1 billion. So it was significant, but you think you took 5 paychecks, 5 paydays along the way. And, but so it's pick that up and like apply it down to our levels. One of the things I like doing is like, what are the other guys doing and how can I apply that to something that works for me?
Exactly.
So let's talk about, how do you get started in something like this? What's a lot of people spend years searching for their first deal and that type of stuff. Where do you suggest people, like, kind of get their teeth cut, or what do you want to call it? When I'm like breaking into this space and try to figure this out.
It's a great question. I think something that a lot of people struggle with, but there's really a few ways to do it. The one way is if you have people who are asking you consistently, like if you look back over the last 90 days and say, did anybody ask, can I pick your brain? Did anybody say, can I take you to coffee? Can you help me with this problem? Could I give you equity in my company? Can you give me some advice on my business? Any of those things, those are all great clues that people value the knowledge, skills, experience, connections that you've got. And most of us either just say no and because they don't want to be bothered, or we say sure, and we go and have the 2-hour lunch and they ask us all the questions, and then they don't do anything with the great advice that we gave them. So what I found to be something that works really well is, instead of being frustrated at all the people that are asking for advice and then you give your time and then most of them don't take it, you can say, look, the way I do that is with a consultation. And to me, it's the way I do that is with a half-day consult. We'll take a look at the problems that you've got and the challenges you're facing, the constraints you're experiencing, and we'll break through them and get you from where you are right now to where you want to go. The investment, not the cost, but the investment to do that is $25,000. That's what I've chosen to do. Other people could do any different amount. And we'll spend up to 4 hours going down and breaking through that. If that's something that sounds like a fit, let me know, and I'll give you my one-page consulting agreement and wiring instructions. And if not, no harm, no worries, no foul. But I only have time to work with my paying consulting clients and my portfolio companies. So saying that, like having that kind of down pat, is really helpful because A, it screens out all the people that aren't willing to invest in themselves, and B, it converts all those things that you're throwing off right now that are potential deal flow into deal flow. And so, and the other nice thing is that by putting up a filter of some fee for your initial working with them, you not only weed out the people that won't invest in themselves, but also you can pick up a decent side hustle income. So, for me, I started doing that and it changed everything because all the people that were taking up so much of my time and stopping me from hitting the goals that I had for myself went away. They instantly fell away. It now repulses the people who are exactly who I don't want to deal with. And it only attracts the people that I do. So that's the first thing, is that you probably have deal flow right now if you've got anybody asking for any kind of advice from you. And then the second threshold would be, okay, maybe you don't have anybody that's asking that right now. I'd say, well, you need to get out more. But if you don't have that, then you can say, okay, well, where can I find businesses? And so if you've got an existing business, I built a thing called an acquisition wheel. And I say, if you can ask the question, what do I want to solve for in my current existing business? And you answer that question, then that'll tell you what you should acquire. So I think having an idea of what is it that I want to acquire, what is my acquisition criteria, is really critical. If you don't have acquisition criteria, then you're going to maybe buy anything. And you could definitely buy the wrong thing. So those questions would be, what am I solving for in my current business? Do I want more customers? If I do, then I'm going to horizontally integrate. I'm going to acquire competitors, whether they're indirect or direct. Maybe I want more leads. Then I'm going to acquire media, people that have already aggregated the attention and eyeballs of my ideal customer profile. Maybe I need infrastructure or teams or other resources like that. Then I'm going to acqui-hire. I'm going to look for people that already have the teams that I want. I'm going to acquire them, merge them with my company. Now I've instantly got a sales team, a software dev team, an engineering team, an R&D team, etc. Maybe I say, well, gosh, I really would just want more sales, and I'd like to ideally have a higher average order value than I'm getting right now. Then you're going to look for other companies that have products or services that your existing customer base is already buying before, during, or after the time they're buying from you. Or maybe you say, I would actually like a higher lifetime customer value. Well, then you're going to look to acquire companies or products or services that have recurring components. Or you want more profit, then I'm going to go vertically integrate up and down the supply and distribution chain. Or I need innovation, then you're going to acquire IP, right? So those are 7 categories of acquisitions that really cover pretty much any challenge that you might be experiencing in your business that you've got right now. So let's say that I identified that I want more leads, so I'm going to go after media. Then I'm going to say, okay, who can I identify? I'm going to make a long list of all the people that have aggregated the attention and eyeballs of my ideal customer profile. That might be in groups on Facebook or LinkedIn. It might be newsletters, magazines, publications, trade shows, events. It could be television shows. It could be podcasts. There's all these things that hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of my ideal customer have already been gathered up, and they're all in one place. And there's a trust agent that they look to. And if I can make a deal with that trust agent to acquire that media, now I own that. I've got all the leads I ever need. And so I think that, like, for a business owner, that's the place to start. And then if you don't have a business, it's okay. How can I take an inventory of the things that I'm interested in and the knowledge and skills and experience and connections I've got, so that I can identify a place to start. And so with that, I do a quadrant kind of analysis, and I say, what are your hobbies, passions, and interests, right? What's my hobbies, passions, and interests? What are the things that I actually like to do? And just brainstorm those out. And then you say, what do I have actual experience in and skills? And then you say, what are my superpowers? What am I like really good at? And last but not least, what connections do I have that might be helpful in this journey? And when you do those 4 things and then kind of cross out the things that are the hobbies and interests and passions that you probably wouldn't want to do for business or you don't think would be good fit, and you really drill down to your top, say, 3 top skills and experience and your top 3 connection networks and your top 3 superpowers, that's going to become self-evident what you should do. And so, so then you take that and run it through a income analysis and say, okay, now I know the industry, I know what I'm going to do, I know who I'm going to help, I know kind of how I'm going to help them. What do I need to make? And what I need to make is going to determine the size of the EBITDA or the profit of the business that you're going to acquire. Because you can say, oh, I want to make $10,000 a month doing this. Great. So I know I need an EBITDA or an SDE, a seller discretionary earnings, of at least 10,000 times 12 months, 120 grand to do that. But I probably also want to put some money into growing the business. How much do I want to put in growing the business? Let's say that's another 10 grand a month. Well, now you've got 120 you want to get paid, and you got 120 you've got to invest. That's 240,000. Any business that's not making 240,000 or more in profit gets put off the list, right? And so it's kind of reverse engineering that way into that. Now, once you identify all of those acquisition criteria, you say, okay, where am I going to find these things? 2 different real approaches. One is organic, and that's where you're going to tell everybody what you do. That's friends, family, employees, contractors, everybody that you work with. The next would be that you go to centers of influence that would have the people that you want, like attorneys, accountants, valuation experts, investment bankers, business brokers, those kinds of people. And then there's the systematic way where you say, I'm going to go to Sales Navigator, Zoom Info, or Crunchbase. I'm going to build a list of at least 1,000 potential acquisitions that fit my acquisition criteria. And now I'm going to do an outbound marketing campaign for those people. That might be a combination of email, direct messages, and snail mail, direct mail. And then I'm going to use mail houses and automated ringless voicemail and CRMs to do those campaigns so that they can be tagged and followed up with. Then I'm going to say, okay, what systems do I need to build to receive the calls as they come in? I'll probably get a call center to do that. The call center is going to basically have a VA that's going to go through my acquisition criteria to be sure that these people who are calling in do in fact meet them. And then the few that do, they'll set appointments for me to have a conversation with them. And if I do those things, then there's just really an endless amount of deal flow that I'm going to have.
I can just vision it right now. Most people are going to rewind this and listen to that 3 times. You just dumped this amazing amount of knowledge in a short period of time. So I appreciate that. And that's just the fire hose you get for being around you. I've been on seminars with you. I've been in courses with you. And it's just like, okay, I can't write this fast. I'm going to watch that again. So I absolutely love it. What's the story time? I always like some good stories and stuff. What's one of the coolest things you've ever helped either by yourself, buy a piece of for yourself or one of your clients, one of your students?
There's so many deals in there. To me, they're just all fascinating. So I like I think that like the kind of the big game changers are fun. I remember sitting down at a restaurant with the owner of a publishing company. And we were talking about acquiring, and I had just experienced some pretty significant losses, so I didn't have a ton of cash handy. But this deal was really good, and I'd been working on it for a couple of years. And they sat down, and they had just had some challenges with some key personnel that were leaving, and it opened up an opportunity to invest in the company. And when we had first talked, we were talking about a valuation of around $10 million. But because they needed some cash to fix the things that were going wrong, they wanted $1 million. And so there was the opportunity to acquire 33% of the company for $1 million. So that's a 70% discount in the valuation, right? Going from 10 million to 3 million as a valuation. So I sat there and we had breakfast, and then, they said, so, if you're interested, let's do this, and we'll do it for $1 million. And I was like, absolutely, sounds great. Now, I didn't have $1 million, nor did I know where I was going to get the $1 million, but that didn't stop me. I just say yes, and I'll make it happen, which I would highly recommend for anybody. And then we were able to talk about that. And I said, well, you guys need that all at once? And he was like, no, I don't think we need it all at once. And I said, well, how about if we did? And we went back and forth, and we ended up with, I'll get $400,000 down, and then they'll do $200,000 a year for 3 years, no interest, just $200,000 a year. But I also was able to negotiate that, not negotiate, but I also knew that the profits that would be coming to me from the business would be about $360,000 a year. So I knew that I could, even after taxes, pay that $200K. So all I had to do was come up with the 400. And I knew that if I could get a deal on the 400 that would allow me to pay that back over time, then it was likely that the business was going to make even more as time went on. But even if it didn't, I'd still have, now this would be pre-tax, but I'd still have 360,000 minus 200,000 over those 3 years would mean I'd have 160,000 extra, right? So that would mean that I would have 480,000, which would give me enough to pay off the 400 and then still have 80 left over. Again, taxes notwithstanding. But I would work out, I'd probably go and hawk to the IRS for a deal like that and pay the interest and get a payment plan worked out if I had to. Turns out I didn't. What I did was then I went and I talked to a friend of mine that was looking to make more on their money than they were making. And we cut a deal where they advanced $400,000 to me. And it was on a 3-year loan, and with a 3-year balloon at 10% interest. So basically it worked great for them because they were making 40 grand a year in interest on the 400. And I would pay them back from the money that was coming. And that deal was 100x return for me on the, even on the amount. It's infinite, obviously, because there's no money out of my pocket, but it was 100x just on the value of the acquisition over time. So pretty cool thing that happened there. And those deals, there's just so many of those, but I look back at them and I'm just like, and I'll tell my wife, I'll come home and I'll say, remember that time? We'll be, let's say, in Mexico. And I'll just have had a deal and put something together. And I said, remember that time we were in Mexico and we did that deal that, that turned into $100 million. And she's like, yeah, that seems like it happens a lot. I'm like, yeah, it does, but it's really cool because you can mark your deal history, your personal deal history with those key deals like that just, and the more you're out there, the more you put yourself out there, the more they come around. So that would be one of them.
That's cool. So one of the things that I caught in that whole concept is you equated that as if the business was going to stay flat, and you would never. I know you know it well enough now to know you would never enter anything that you couldn't impact, right? Or you couldn't see an upward side to it. So you did the math, and you did the okay, I'm risking working for this company for 3 or 4 years, and paying them off. But you wouldn't be there if you didn't think you could make an impact. You wouldn't be there if you didn't think you could make the company make more money than it's making now, or fix something wrong to drive the revenue up. So, but you didn't do that coulda, woulda, shoulda. I'm going to factor, because a lot of people do that. When they're thinking about a deal, it's a little expensive, but if I do X, Y, and Z, I get my money back and I make some money. You did the math as, okay, it's going to run the way it's going to run, and does it pay for itself? And if yes, then it makes pretty good sense, because I'm not going to get there and do nothing. Right.
Yeah. But I didn't, wouldn't want to take the chance with anybody's money that it wasn't going to work out. I would have made that deal work, whatever it took. And I think that's the bottom line, that everybody, when you see a fantastic deal like that, you've got to jump on it. You've got to say, absolutely. And then hustle like crazy to make it work, because it won't last. That kind of deal isn't going to sit around. If they'd have gone to anybody else, they'd have had that money in a heartbeat, right?
You often say that once in a lifetime deals come along. How often?
3 or 4 times a year. Once a lifetime deal comes around 3 or 4 times a year. Unlike the guy with the leaf blower behind me, who apparently is going to sit at my window and blow the leaves the entire time. He's coming around 100% of the time.
I don't hear it at all, so maybe it's not picking up on the mic.
Good.
That doesn't say much. I'm deaf and have hearing aids underneath this, so it might be like really loud, and everybody else is obnoxiously annoyed by it, and I'm like, oh, it sounds fine.
I think there's a group of people that have all of our houses watched, and they're like, if they see that you're walking towards your computer to do a podcast or something, they're like, get the leaf blowers out. Anyway,
yeah, I've had somebody knocking on the door one day, and like I'm not answering the door, and like they wouldn't give up, like knock, 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 knock. And, I was like, they see the car here, and I'm like, I'm not, I just wanted to see us. We have a tiny home. I just want to see your tiny home. I was like, go away. But yeah, so let's just jump back into this. So we had a cool story. Like, is there any industry that you just would totally avoid right now? Like, is there anything like I just wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole?
I mean, for me, there are a lot of them. So I just I don't want litigation prone or regulatory prone businesses. So I'll stay away from a lot of really favorable opportunities just because I don't want the exposure. So, anything that's governed by FINRA or HIPAA or, heavy FTC risk or FCC risk or FDA risk, those, it's just so much extra hassle. Also industries that have high CapEx that quickly obsolesces, like an AV company. So they need a lot of capital expenditures to acquire all of the equipment. And then the equipment is outdated pretty much 6 months after they bought it. And if they're going to stay in the game, they've got to keep upgrading. I also don't like inventory heavy businesses, because if I can get a business that's a service business, then I completely eliminate my COGS, right? It's, my COGS category of my cost of goods sold category of the inventory I've got to buy. How am I going to fund that? How am I going to warehouse it? How am I going to finance it? Who's going to handle it? Who's going to 3PL it? All of that kind of stuff is a non-issue in a services company. So for me, those are kind of part of the acquisition criteria that goes into how do I identify what I am looking for, is to know what I'm not looking for. So I think it's a great question. It's good for people to know, what do you not want? Because then you can immediately say, that's not for me, and go deeper, faster into what you do want.
Yeah, I like that. So interesting that stuff in a box doesn't appeal to me much. We had one company we were trying to launch, and we literally named it SIB. And excuse my French, but it was shit in a box, right?
Yeah.
So we were selling stuff on Shopify. We had lined up the products we were going to sell, and we just called it SIB Productions or Products or something like that, LLC. When Shopify figured out what SIB stood for, they banned us for life from it. They just said no. And it's because I joked with the business partner, and that because he was on the phone when they did it. It is like they're really like self-conscious about all the junk that people sell on there, right? They didn't want us to, SIB like shit in a box, right? And that's just the, stuff in a box, whatever you call it. And that was my nickname I used for anything where I had to house the inventory, put it in a box, and ship it to somebody. Yeah. I called them, SIB businesses.
Yeah.
And to be nice, stuff in a box. But that's funny is the Shopify, they asked the business partner, what does SIB stand for? And he said, shit in a box. And they're like, no. And they basically, they rejected his credit card. They just shut down the store. We were still setting it up and working with them. But they said, don't ever come back.
Right.
So, yeah. But I'm a big fan of like knowing what you want, and I like what you said. The fastest way to know what you want is clear description of what you don't want, right?
Yeah.
I got into owning a pest control company in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because I had some relatives working there. They talked me into it. I buy it. Next thing I know, I'm having to take all the tests and get licenses because they have to hang on somebody. And the guy that we bought it from, or we're trying to buy it from, one, wasn't following the rules, and two, wanted to retire, and we didn't want the liability. So we ended up just getting the used equipment and some customers. So that's one reason I came out to you guys to learn more, was I bought that one totally wrong. Like too small, all these other problems. Then I moved here to California. I live in Northern California in wine country now. And they're like, hey, you're gonna make a branch to Lullaby Pest Control in Northern California. It's like, hell no. And they're like, why? I said, because the same rules apply. The EPA rules and regulations apply, except for California applies some really mean teeth to them. So if you accidentally spill something in Oklahoma, they say, shame on you. You got to clean it up and stuff. Here, you could face tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines overnight.
Yeah.
For a blue collar action, the guys you hire to go out and do this, they're not rocket scientists, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them are high school grads that can pass a written exam. they're going to spill something occasionally, and it's a big risk here. So I believe in what are you willing, what tolerances you willing to have, what do you like, what do you not like, and that's a big play inside of this. So,
Absolutely.
man, we're already at 49 minutes. I've asked you a lot of questions already. What should have I asked? Like, what should we be talking about to make the most impact for the customers?
I
For
think
the
we got
listeners?
it. I think we did it. I'm very happy with the things we talked about.
Cool. So, okay, let's do this. Somebody they're new out there. They're getting into this space. I am I'm not compensated in this point. I might talk to you later about affiliate program or something. But at this point, there's no agreement between me and you. You're on the show. I just love what you do and who you are as a person. How do people reach out to you and look at some of the stuff you've got going on so they can learn this space? Because you do teach this.
Yeah. So I have a podcast like you do. It's called Business Lunch, and we talk about all kinds of stuff like this. And that's a great place to connect. You can go to, I have a challenge I do that's at Get Epic Challenge. It's a free challenge. And so, you go through there and basically we talk about kind of more in depth over 5 days. What are some of the strategies and things like that? And then I'm on social everywhere at /Roland Frasier. So TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, there's tons of content I put out all the time on that stuff.
That's awesome. And I tell you, I'm getting close to about 100 interviews now. I've interviewed pretty much anybody that's teaching this space. I've taken a couple of the courses for content. You provide the most content.
Thanks.
I'm still watching some of the videos. There's enough content there that I just go when I'm missing something, I go, I bet Roland's got a video on that inside of my my locker or whatever you want to call it.
That's great.
Is it a Kajabi board or whatever you guys are using? But there's something there on this. I just need to dig and find it. So to this point, I have my library now. When I was in real estate, I bought a course from somebody that had like 35 different courses. It was like 40 or 50 grand, but it was called the whole enchilada is what he actually called it. It was everything you needed.
That would be Ron LeGrand.
It was Lou Brown, Ron LeGrand's buddy.
Oh, Lou. Okay. Lou's actually a customer of mine. He's in our mastermind. That's funny. In our deals mastermind.
Yeah. He's a great guy. And ask him about me. I did short sales. He asked me to help him rewrite his short sale.
I will.
So he'll know who I am. But, I had that filing cabinet. If something was in real estate, I needed a contract or I needed to learn how to do something. Lou had the whole enchilada, so I could just pull it off there and go look at it, or sometimes we just call him. Hey man, we got this problem.
Yeah,
you've provided that resource, and it's not in your free program; it's in the next level up. But that free program that you have is unbelievable value for the amount of time. I'm still on your. I'm on all the mailing list, of course, and I'm on the alumni thing. So I just got an email the other day. They posted, say, here's the whole workbook in one chunk. And I was like, mine is no pieces. I grabbed that too. And I'm right every time. It's funny as I go back through it occasionally, because your things change, things you want. Like what I thought I wanted when I first got into this space, which was almost 2 years ago, we did a marketing roll up, which took a lot of my time. And then now I'm back in, okay, what do I want to do next? Going through those worksheets again is extremely valuable. Right.
Yeah. And they change. I update constantly and I put the new stuff in, and, like if you're in the alumni group, and I also add them to everybody that's got a part of the program, so whenever we do new agreements, new contracts, new deals, that stuff goes in there. I think that's just part of the giving back to the community, because ultimately, my goal is that there will be some people in there that bring deals that I want to do, and we end up doing them. It's happened several times that we do deals together. So it's a win-win for everybody.
We got a couple minutes. Let's do one more story.
And I apologize. I'm out of time on the hour.
Oh,
I had,
okay.
Cause we got started just a little bit late. But I'm happy to wrap up with anything you'd like to wrap up with.
I was going to do a story, but let's just wrap up. Let's remind people how they reach out to you, and let's just call it a show after that.
Sure. So I'm pretty much everywhere online, /RolandFrasier, Roland Frasier. You can find my challenge at getepicchallenge.com. Podcast is Business Lunch, and love to connect with anybody. I answer all my messages myself.
I appreciate having you on here. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and we've been texting back and forth. And I'll publicly apologize for ordering hot coffee from you, or hot cocoa from you the other night at 11 o'clock after you confirmed the show. I mixed you up with, my wife had been texting me, and she walked into the house and said, "Heat up some water. I'm gonna make some hot cocoa. We're under the stars and stuff." And I looked down and I sent it to you. So
I liked it. Hey, I'm always for hot cocoa. There's never a bad time.
Yeah. Luckily, I didn't tell you I was making it Irish, but that wouldn't probably bother you either. So,
no, it wouldn't.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. And
thank you.
Call that a show.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Cool. And is there anything I can do for you?
I just keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep putting out the content, because when I come back, there's questions that I have, and I always know I can come back and jump in another epic challenge or another
100%.
call that you have, and get that stuff done. And you've got a support system around you that's just unbelievable. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of the people that have been on this show are either coaches of yours or have been coaches of yours in the past. I've interviewed a lot of them already. So
Oh, nice. That's great.
So yeah. So it's been a
very cool.
tremendous
Okay.
resource.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.